If I'm curt with you, it's because time is a factor. I think fast, I talk fast, and I need you guys to act fast if you want to get out of this. So pretty please, with sugar on top. Welcome to Rabbit Fighters. This ain't no party, Greg. This ain't no disco, Brian. This might be a little fooling around, Rabbit Fighters, because this week we are looking back on Stop Making Sense, widely recognized as one of the greatest concert films of all time. Every website, when you type this in, greatest concert film of all time. Capturing talking heads at their creative and performing zenith way back in the year of our Lord, 1983. We're all wearing matching muted tones. I've got my bongos ready. Brian's got a big old oversized suit, and Greg is stretched out lest he pull a hammy, sprinting around the stage. And we'll be joined by 47 guest podcasters throughout the episode. I'm Joshua.
Hey guys, I'm Brian.
I'm Greg.
All right, friends, let's get down to brass tacks here. Start off with a question. Brian, you're obviously a huge Talking Heads fan, since this was your selection. If you had to describe who the Talking Heads are to someone who just walked in off the street, what kind of music they made, their vibe, their legacy, how would you do it?
That's a very loaded question. And I saw you post this and I gave it a lot of thought. Actually, it's actually a really hard thing to do.
Which is why I asked it, because I have a hard time putting them in a box.
So I saw you post this question earlier and a couple of days ago or something. I was like, all right, I'm going to think of this and how would I describe this? And then I sort of came to the conclusion that the inability to describe them in a genre is sort of what makes them great. Because if you do a simple Google search for like Talking Heads genre, you get everything from post-punk, new wave, art rock, funk, art punk, synth pop, world music, and avant-garde style.
Which a lot of those are just meaningless.
Yeah. And I was trying to think, which one would you land on? I guess new wave, because they were late 70s, early 80s. But I mean,
But they don't sound like the Cars. Like the Cars are a quintessential new wave band. They sound nothing like the Cars.
Yeah. You know? I mean, it's interesting if you understand, I guess, having listened to them a lot and understanding the genesis of the band, right? The three founding members coming from the Rhode Island School of Design,
RISD.
And then RISD being sort of dropped into the late 70s punk scene in New York, and putting art kids into a punk scene kind of gives you a feel for what type of music these individuals might make. But I think it's definitely just a massive blend. I mean, it's a frenetic, I think a lot of it changes, right? I think I was mostly focused on the first, like maybe four or five albums, probably my favorites of them. I've listened to their later work, but I think that's kind of their pinnacle of like of their discography that people really focus in on. I think they suffer from a little bit what a lot of other bands do. One notable band that I thought about this, which was, we've never talked about this, the namesake of this podcast, right? It was like T-Rex. So everyone knows T-Rex for like Bang a Gong, which is a good song, but it's the very, very like tip of the iceberg of their albums that what makes them amazing. So it's the same thing with the Talking Heads. Is like Burning Down the House was constantly played on MTV and things. So that's what a lot of people know them for. But it's probably not the same one of my least favorite songs, but I mean, it's just, it kind of happens where that's the one that gets played and that one has so much rotation. Everyone just associates said band that's a casual listener with said song. So I'd say that's not a great example to tell someone to listen to, but that gives you a feeling for kind of what their music is going to sound like and feel like.
Yeah. So how did you get into Talking Heads?
I don't know. I somehow stumbled. I don't know if I stumbled upon Stop Making Sense. At one point, I just was trying to seek out lots of different things, and that was an album that stuck out to me. And then you just kind of work your way backwards from there. It's not my favorite album of theirs, but it's up there. Probably, it's the one that's associated with Stop Making Sense.
So I was totally aware of Stop Making Sense for a really long time. Like I don't think you can be even semi-literate in rock and roll and not have seen clips of Stop Making Sense here and there, and be aware of David Byrne and the kabuki suit and his like weird gyrations and stuff like that. So it was totally on my radar. I don't know why I never actually sat down and watched this until now, but it is a really interesting concert. I think just from a logistics standpoint, just the way they pull everything off and slowly build and add more and more people to it, more musicians to it. But I just don't know why I never saw it until now. So I'm glad you recommended this. I definitely enjoyed making it through. I didn't get to see it from beginning to end unbroken. I found all the YouTube clips of it and strung them all together on a playlist, and then made my way through it over several nights.
The poor man's screaming.
Yeah, I was actually when I got to the end of it, I was watching a few interviews with them, like on Stephen Colbert, supporting its release in theaters, which I guess was a few months back. So I'm really sad that I didn't get a chance to see it in the theater, because I think I'd really enjoy it. And it was it was remastered and remixed for like modern stereo systems and audio systems in the theaters.
I think they did I think they did like a 4K remaster, and it was in IMAX.
Yeah, it was IMAX. Yeah.
What's really fascinating about this documentary is that it's not, people call it like top, one of the top concert films, but it's not necessarily just a concert. It's a performance. It's clearly been rehearsed, staged. There's footage of him like practicing dance moves to see how they work, his thought process around how this stage comes together. And anybody who knows about anything about this film, it's, it starts off with Psycho Killer just by himself, and it's sort of about building the community of the band. And as each song progresses, they add more set pieces, and then the next member comes out until like maybe song 4, which is finally has the core member out, and then it keeps going as the extended lineup kind of builds the song. So it's almost it's a performance art piece concert. So it's not just like this, hey, let's just film live shows for 4 days and piece the best pieces together. It's like clearly rehearsed and done in a way that it's meant to be a film in a way, and I feel like that's kind of the artistic side to it, where you have like, it's not just music. It sort of has a point, and it's kind of interesting around how they're, I saw a recent interview with Tina Weymouth, and like, what is it about? And she's like, oh, it's about love and community for that purpose, right? Like everything is sort of building and people are coming together to where at the end it culminates in the extended lineup and this whole frenetic energy where they're all playing together. And I think that's one of the parts that stuck with me, is that it is kind of this very minimalistic thing that allows the music to kind of come through and the enjoyment that they're all having playing together, which is kind of infectious as you watch it. So I think that's really cool about, it's funny because you see this band that now no longer gets along or whatever, but at the time, at the peak of this documentary or whatever, they're all, it's cool. Like I happen to notice as David Byrne, and we'll maybe talk about this later, is, singing Naive Melody, you look at Chris Franz playing drums and he's like chuckling and smiling at like what the performance is going on. So it's like they're all clearly enjoying playing with each other because, I think they're kind of at the peak of their game, so to say.
Well, he did speak to the reason why he's smiling so much when he was on Stephen Colbert, and it was because of drugs.
Oh, good. Oh, good.
He did mention that people call him out on that. It's like, oh, he seems very happy and very smiling.
It's strike whatever I said from the record. And
I hate that. I always hate that when people are like, you're just like I used to have conversations with people, and I'll be like, yeah, man, I had a really good conversation with you last night. That was super interesting. And they were like, yeah, it was so many drugs. And you're like, God damn it.
You ruined it.
Ruins it all. Fuck you. I hate it when it was like, yeah, it was just such a joy to watch you watching the music and having so much fun. He's like, yeah, I was fucking wasted. And you're like, come on.
It might be true, because if you notice, he's like the only one not wearing the minimalist. He's wearing like turquoise, and I think the excuse
he's got a golf shirt.
They said he forgot to do his laundry, so then he just had to keep wearing this shirt this whole time.
But it's 3 nights though, at least.
Yeah, it's like the Great British Baking Show, where they all have to wear the same outfit every day.
He wears different. David Byrne wears different stuff. Yeah,
he's allowed to, though, because he's the front man.
Yeah, he does costume changes, but there is one point where he's wearing a red hat, and I read that it was on the first night they recorded, somebody threw a red hat on the stage and he put it on. So from the subsequent performances, they kept the red hat next to the drum set, so he could put it on for continuity, like every time, to walk around with his red hat on.
I mean, it's funny because, like, who cares? You create this illusion that it was all one night. Like, nobody gives a fuck. As long as you put good stuff out there and it's entertaining and it's fun to watch, like, nobody cares. I will say some stuff that I noticed about this because I'd never seen it before. Having heard about the band dynamics before seeing this, I then watched how this thing unfolded, and it was like David Byrne comes out with a boombox, presses play on a tape recorder, and plays a totally entertaining version of Psycho Killer. And for me, I was like, this is him kind of coming out and being like, I'm the band.
Mm-hmm.
I can do this shit with a tape recorder if I feel like it. These other people, watch, I'll bring some other people in and it might get a little more fun. But like, they're clearly set up as like, what like Michael Jordan said, his supporting cast, he'd always be like, well, my supporting cast played well tonight. And then Tina Weymouth comes in and she's kind of like meekly playing bass, which by the way, I guess she didn't know how to play bass and they made her learn bass to be in the band. She was a visual artist, and David Byrne and Chris Franz were both like, no, you have to be in our band. She was like, but I want to be an artist. They're like, you can do that later. You can be old and paint. You can't be old and play rock and roll. So she had to learn the bass. But it's funny to like watch her come out. She seems really tentative next to David Byrne, who's already doing his thing. And then you just keep bringing people out and like layering Byrne's supporting cast around him. And I'm like, this does kind of read like it's your thing and you're kind of letting them play with you. But
I disagree, but continue.
But yeah,
I have some points to contend here, but continue.
But I was like, it's interesting that they're loading in parts of the stage while he's playing. It's kind of like the universe is being created around him, and he's not really like being. It's not like they're interrupting him. He's just still in it. And like as it went on, it became much more communal, and I'll tell you when. It's when you brought all the people that aren't in the Talking Heads on, and like then it became like a super joyous occasion. But I never thought of Byrne as anything more than like an oddball who writes songs about stuff and not really people. But as the concert went on, I was like, he's really fucking gifted.
Like, what's the highlight of the concert for you, Greg? Like, having watched it
once in a lifetime, for sure. Once in a lifetime. It's the most joyous part of the entire concert. Like everyone's firing on all cylinders. The audience, it really matters too if the audience is into it.
That's like three-quarters of the way through, right?
Really close to the end, I think.
Everybody's there. Yeah.
Fourth from the end or something.
12th track.
Yeah. But like the audience matters too. And the audience loves the Talking Heads. Obviously, they're all there to see the Talking Heads, but like they really love that song in particular. And like it just, there's just this explosion of joy everywhere. Just the players he brings on to play with the Talking Heads are
all excellent,
phenomenal. Like the backup singers, the two ladies, are incredible. They got Bernie Worrell, from Parliament on the keyboards. Like they've got these incredible.
Oh, that's who that was. Okay.
Yeah, backing performers like the guitarist. I forget his name.
Alex Weir.
He's
out front, incredible. Dude, awesome. Like he's
incredible. Incredible guitarist. He has some like insane wankery where he just like destroys the guitar. I'm like, this is great. Like that brought an element to the music and the performance that cannot be overstated. And also it brought this huge other thing that I never thought about when I thought about the Talking Heads is like, it's all this like funk and soul and like kind of gospel, which no way I ever would have classified any Talking Heads stuff as is in those categories. Speaking to Brian's thing earlier, where like, how do you categorize these guys? Those are words I never would have associated with the Talking Heads, and I was like, I'm associating them with them now.
Yeah, I mean that's an interesting point because they do a cover of "Take Me to the River." I think that's on their second album, or something.
So and they were playing that well before their first album, like playing that live.
Yeah. So Joshua, give me thoughts. What's
so the concert itself?
Reaction, thoughts
I mean, the high point for me was definitely where I feel like it kicked into high gear because I enjoyed like the build up, and like for somebody with ADHD, I felt like this was a perfect film. A concert to watch because I get bored a lot during things like this, but there's always something going on. Like every song, like it makes like 75% of the way through and they start building for the next song. stage hands come on and start rolling things in, and you start seeing some activity. And so I feel like for me, there was definitely like something I could be like, oh, what's going on? Who's coming on next? But that build up through the first few songs, I think it really kicks into high gear during life during wartime, when David Byrne like puts down the guitar and he's just like performing. I felt like that was like a huge high point for me. That was what really showcased like his I don't know, artistry, performanceship, if that's a word. His endurance. I mean, Jesus Christ, it's basically a jazzercise video.
He was like a physicality of him just running around constantly.
I mean,
it's like Springsteen. Springsteen is like that, like inexhaustible.
Yeah, but if you look, the whole thing, even the extended lineup, they're all just dancing and moving constantly in this whole thing.
Yeah.
It's like he's like
semi choreographed.
Like
they're all doing moves that you can tell they've done before, but it's also improvised to a certain degree. Like they're picking up on what other people are doing and then kind of joining in, that was really entertaining to watch.
He did say that like what seemed to be improvisation was actually planned, but it came from improvisation. It's kind of like the same way the Second City does their shows. Like they would come out, they would do something on a certain night and be like, after the show, they'd be like, hey, that thing where we did the dancey steps next to each other, like let's keep that. Let's keep that.
Do that again.
And so like that kept happening as the shows went on early, and then they really locked it in because David Byrne is a perfectionist and he wants stuff. But the lamp, he said he broke the lamp like 100 times, like in other shows, and like they were like, oh, did you ever break a light bulb? And he's like, I almost every time. I almost always broke a light bulb.
That would make sense.
But he strove to not break a light bulb. So
I was gonna say, I did have problems like finishing watching this. It took a couple tries to get all the way through. As I think on, like, I'm really glad you chose this because I do genuinely really like like Talking Heads, but I've always found them to be a little bit, I don't know, like inaccessible. Their first album, I mean, I've listened to their first album, 77, countless times. I love that album. Fear of Music is fantastic. Remain in Light, Songs About Buildings and Futures is the second album, right? And then, Remain in Light, the one with their faces are red. Those three albums, I absolutely love. But when I really like dig a band, like I find myself like I really want to like know more about their lore and learn their names and find out where they're from. and for some reason I never got to that level with Talking Heads where I don't really know the names of the songs. Like I've listened to those albums a million times, but I've never paid attention like what's that song called? Other than 77. I have trouble with it. And I don't know why that is because and seeing Stop Making Sense, I think was helpful because it did like elevate them in my mind to like what their, I don't know, legacy and stature and how truly talented they were, especially at that time. So maybe I'll go back and dig a little deeper and start trying to memorize a little bit more about their albums. But it's just I don't know, there's just always been a disconnect for me. And so sitting down and watching this entire thing from start to finish, it was really hard because I feel like there's like a couple like lulls in there. Like what's the Swamp song where they put on like a red light and he's like kind of vamping it up a bit.
It wasn't Roxanne putting on the red light. It was Swamp Thing. Right?
I felt like that song was really inaccessible. And by the end of it, I was the Tom song. Like I actually
Tom Club song. I was like, what the hell?
I love they put that in there. You weren't a fan of that?
Well, I didn't know that. I didn't know until afterward that Jerry Harrison was in the Tom Club. So I was like, why the hell are they covering it?
No, it's the husband and wife.
And the wife.
One of them. Okay,
Tina and Chris.
Both of them are okay. I knew one of them was, or I guess two of them were.
Yeah, they formed Tom Club when David Byrne put them on a hiatus. And so, but I had no idea the influence of that song. I had no idea that beat was them because you've heard that from Genius of Love in countless songs throughout the years. the first thing that came to my mind was Mariah Carey Fantasy, and so I was Wikipediaing it and trying to tracing it back.
Can I stop you? I like how you know Mariah Carey song names, but not the Talking Heads song names. So
it's because she names stuff fucking fantasy
everywhere in the 90s.
Sweet, sweet fantasy, baby. It's called fantasy or sweet fantasy or
yeah.
It's not like Radiohead.
That's
where it's
easy for my juvenile brain.
Subterranean paranoid and alien.
Some other cool lore is Jerry Harrison's also in the Modern Lovers.
Yeah, which I was going to say.
And, Jonathan Richman.
And no disrespect to Modern Lovers, but I did want to counter something that you said earlier, Brian, because I did go down the rabbit hole a little bit trying to learn a little bit more. So I watched Stop Making Sense, and then I went back and watched a bunch of YouTube early recordings, 1975, 1976, 77, of them touring, their first stint in Toronto. And most of the ones I saw, it was still when they're a three-piece, so before Jerry joined. And I actually really enjoyed those more than I think as a four-piece. It just worked. And to counter what you were saying, Greg, about her Tina Weymouth's bass lines, I actually found her bass lines to be really infectious when it was just very simple. She was like what she was doing really felt like the majority of the song. It was the catchiest parts of the song.
I didn't think she was bad. I was just saying she had to learn the shit. Yeah. She had to learn she was a painter, and they made her learn the bass. So
there's nothing cooler than Tina Weymouth playing bass.
Absolutely, and she was killing it in Stop Making Sense. But in the early videos when it's just the three of them, and they're playing in front of a really tiny crowd. I don't know. I found that those performances to be way more interesting when it was only the three of them than when the fourth came in. I'm not saying they're superior to Stop Making Sense, because Stop Making Sense as a piece of art, I think is unassailable. It's incredibly well done. It really does capture them at the height of their power, and they very obviously have tremendous power. But I still at the end of it was what? I don't know. No, at the end of it, I was I still don't know much about it's still hard for me to remember what song is which.
It's funny hearing you guys speak about this. I thought this was a slam dunk. I didn't realize how much more of a larger fan of the Talking Heads I was than you are. I thought Josh would be all this because the first three of the first four albums are produced by Brian Eno, and I know you're a fan of Brian Eno. So
I'm an Eno fan, right?
I adore.
It's weirdly, I went into this being we all love the Talking Heads. I didn't realize I just was on a different level. Not level.
I actually hated the Talking Heads when in the 80s because I grew up with them. They were contemporaries of when I was a kid. And so I was not ready for this band when I was a kid. They're fucking weird, and they sing songs about sandwiches and shit. I don't know. What the second album is songs about stuff and places or houses, buildings, and
more songs
shit.
about buildings and food.
Songs about buildings and shit. Stuff in your attic. He's hey, I gotta say, there's a book over there. I'm gonna write a song called Book, but it's not gonna be titled Book. It's gonna be titled, three things in that I've learned about life.
That's funny. I guess in my head I was thinking we're all sort of on the same page musically. I'm not saying you should be a fan or not be a fan. I just thought it was we all love this band. I had no idea.
I hated them. I hated them when they came out. I was he's so annoying. And then same as it ever was, that song, you may ask yourself, how did I get here? I was what do you mean, how did you get there? It's your house, you idiot. What do you mean? This is not my beautiful wife. This is all what? Yes, it is, you dummy. And then
his lyrics just went right over your head. You're I don't know.
Because I was in a freshman in high school or something when that came out. And then you get older and you're oh, you're just
God,
get a little.
He's
this
not
right. Know where his house is.
Duran.
I actually did not like Duran, except for the James Bond song.
Oh man, that's a great jam. That's such a good song.
Fatal. Zoe. Yeah. The future will kill, which by the way had Grace Jones in it, who's awesome, and Grace Jones's producer produced the album that they made this documentary into. What is this? What is this album called? The one that they made Stop Making Sense out of?
Speaking in tongues.
Speaking in tongues, the Speaking in Tongues producer was helped produce two Grace Jones albums. So weird little connection there.
And I think it's worth noting too, a very early Jonathan Demme as a director of this. And if you're not aware of his other work, I think probably his two most famous ones are he did Philadelphia and Silence of the Lambs, which I think is kind of interesting. I think he did some other musical documentaries too, but
he did. Also, another tie-in to Rabbit Fighters. Spike Lee introduced them at one of the big festivals. He called it the greatest documentary, music documentary of all time, or something like that, music film of all time.
Just funny. We're just dovetailing right in from our Do the Right Thing.
I know we just keep having episode crossovers without planning it. Yeah. But yeah, going back to
that sounds amazing.
The Talking Heads when I was younger, like I just didn't understand what the hell they were talking about. And Byrne's voice is like a take it or leave it voice for a lot of people. You know, it's he was kicked out of his choir when he was a kid, and because they were like, we don't like your voice, and he was like, well, you know, and then I just decided, I'm gonna keep going because I'll just find different people. He was like, I'll just kind of
not good enough.
It was a school, I think. It was a school choir. He got kicked out of his school choir.
What the hell kind of church is this?
Which is super mean, right? Like you tell a little kid, like, you're bad at this.
That makes sense.
God says you sound like shit.
The interview that I read was like, he was like,
aren't you supposed to be teaching me?
He said about himself, you know, he's like, it always amazes me why people just keep going. And he's like, oh, well, I want to do this, so I'm going to keep doing it. I'll just find a different audience that might be smaller.
That's the difference between me and David Byrne, because when I was in middle school, I wanted to learn the drums. And we were living in Texas at the time, and it was elementary school. Well, no, it was I guess it was elementary school at the time, then not middle school. And I went to, they had like open auditions to like, what instrument are you going to play? And I sat down at the desk in front of like the drum, like the percussion teacher. And they're like, okay, do this, mimic me. And I like was messing it up because I've never played the drums before. And they were just like, don't think this is the instrument for you. And so then I was just like,
it's very small sample size.
I'm not a drummer then. Never went back to it. So it's just... That's the difference. That some people are just destined. David Byrne, he took that criticism and he was like, I'm gonna do it anyway.
But yeah, so for me, I was like, annoying voice, the lyrics don't make any fucking sense. And you know, when you're angsty and you want angsty stuff to fuel your angst, like in middle school and high school, like they don't fill the bill there. You know, once in a lifetime, you're like, what? Same as it ever was. Like, the fuck is he doing? But now I'm older and I have a house and a wife and kids and a car. I talk about this shit all the time.
A giant suit in your closet.
I'll talk about it with my wife. I'll be like, how did we get here? Like, like literally, how did we get here? Like, we're living in the woods with this weird amount of land around us, and like this house, and like we have these kids who are like, how the hell did they get here? There's two people that live with us that we just invented out of the fucking clear blue. So yeah,
not paying rent.
So I understand it.
To cut you some slack, it's not like I found the Talking Heads at the age 12 and I just I mean, I granted I came to them later in my life, so
we're supposed to.
Yeah, in my 20s.
They were just foisted upon me by radio and MTV, and I was like, Jesus Christ.
That's true. If you're a part of the MTV generation, which I still consider myself, but I'm pretty sure they played like Burning Down the House and like once in a lifetime,
and they were
like a ton.
When they had NPR was talking about the remaster in the 1980s, almost no band was bigger than Talking Heads. I was like, no, they weren't that big. They had like a couple songs, and then they started listing, Talking Heads hits, and I was like, oh yeah, they were fucking huge. Like, they listed like 6 songs, and it didn't even get deep into the catalog or anything. I was like, oh.
What's your? This is kind of a loaded question, Brian. But if you had to pick a favorite song by Talking Heads, what would you choose?
In Stop Making Sense or
just like the whole discography, their whole catalog.
I love, and it's in Stop Making Sense, probably because you saw my show notes here. Loaded question, but the sort of the pinnacle for me in this whole performance, and one of my favorite songs is "This Must Be the Place." The rave melody, like it's such a one of my favorite like love songs. It's a love song without the cliches of saying it's a love song. But yeah, just some of the lines in it that are just like in the way he sings them, and nothing to do with him with the lamp, but it's just the little Tina switching to guitar, playing that little riff over and over again. The way he sings it is just gets me every time. It's sort of like the emotional centerpiece of the whole thing for me. The lights come down, like he just kind of has this whole like thing. It's just him and this lamp as sort of artistic representation, and it's just a great love song. It's up there with me, like with like God Only Knows and stuff like that. So I think it's just, has some really powerful pieces to it. But that's probably my favorite song because in a sentimental way. Remain in Light is my favorite album by them in totality. But I feel like Stop Making Sense is a bunch of hits or things that I just know because I've seen this so many times. And then if you look at the track listing, it's like Speaking in Tongues is six tracks off the entire thing. So it has by far the most, with second more songs about building and food.
Clearly
there's only one song of 77.
Yeah, just Psycho Killer. There's even one David Byrne original on here from his solo efforts. But yeah, Remain in Light has 2, Fear Music 2, 3 by more songs about buildings and food, and 1 Talking at 77, 1 Tom Tom Club Jam, and then the one-off Byrne solo.
It's funny because like I didn't know that song Heaven. So the second track they play when Tina Weymouth comes out, I was like, this is really good. Like I actually really love that song. And it's.
Would you say that's your favorite?
No, well in that concert,
Once
in a Lifetime, yeah.
Oh, Once in a Lifetime.
I always mix it up with Take Me to the River, but Once in a Lifetime is probably my favorite in this. But Heaven was like the one I didn't know that I was like, ooh, really nice, like little tune, like I didn't know that one before.
I feel like you can't talk about this whole documentary without Girlfriend Is Better, where he comes out in the suit.
The suit.
Just gyrating with the giant suit.
I saw interviews with him, and he like a lot of performers, they just make shit up about why they like. He said a couple different things. He said, I went to Japan, and a friend of mine was talking about the theater, and he said, oh, in theater everything has to be bigger, like your emotions have to be bigger, and and so I was like, oh, okay, well then the costume, I'll get the suit, it'll be bigger, like a theater show.
I heard another one where he said I wanted my head to be smaller.
Oh yeah.
And so the only way to do that is to make the suit.
Did you see the interviews that he did with himself, where he interviewed himself?
No.
He did this thing.
I think I have seen
this
those,
thing where
that sounds on brand for
and
him.
it was way back then where he didn't want to be interviewed by anyone anymore. And so he dressed up as different characters and interviewed himself in the giant suit with his little head sticking out. And there was one moment where he was in blackface, and I was like, did everyone do blackface? Is there anyone who didn't do blackface from this period in time? Oh my God. He plays like a woman, a skanky dude with a mustache, like a black reporter.
Has anyone listened to any of their latter work, like Naked or...
I was going to say my favorite song of all time from Talking Heads is off of Naked, Nothing But Flowers.
Nothing But Flowers.
I love that song with a passion.
Again, it could be anything.
Such a great track.
Because I'd think that song, I forget what the name is, but I always thought that song was called Home.
That's the thing.
Home, where I want to be. But it's called something else, right?
Yeah,
what's it called? This must be the place, right?
Is that what it is?
So how does the years go, Joshua?
It's like a song about like the apocalypse. Nothing but flowers. This was a factory.
Oh yeah. This was a factory.
And they're talking about nuts and berries. Yeah, exactly. Now I can't sing. So
yeah.
You got it. You got it. I love that song.
Yeah, that's a good song.
Hands down, my favorite.
That's a later one, right?
Yes, that's the last album before they broke up, right? But close second is Almost Everything off of 77.
Big gap.
Have you seen True Stories? I feel like we've talked about this before one time, which was that movie, which was just basically a vehicle for for David Byrne to make this wacky movie of this like Midwest life.
Yeah, I think he was getting into like full Mike Myers territory there, where he's like, I'm gonna play every character, I'm gonna do everything, it's all me.
Super weird. Yeah. That's so goofy. I could have sworn we talked
Didn't
about that.
Spielberg produce that or something? It's the True Stories.
I don't know. I remember watching it, just being like, it's like this weird film where he like mid America, like tabloid. It's like individual tales that weave together in a fictional town in Texas. Yeah. It's super strange, but
like Pulp Fiction.
Exactly. Well, the $1 million question is this, per what the internet says, the greatest concert film of all time?
Well,
I don't know what your pensions are for movie documentaries, but
I actually really don't like concerts filmed concerts. I don't like, and I'll tell you why. And I've thought about this, and I thought about it again while I was watching this. There is nothing about a concert or a live performance of any kind that is better when seen on film. And I've been on stage, hundreds and hundreds of times. I've been in bands, I've been in plays, I've directed stuff. I've seen so much live performance. And at the second you put a camera in front of it and filter that energy through a camera and into a can that someone's looking at, whether it's a phone or a tablet or a giant IMAX screen, it just, the soul of it, the energy of it is gone. And like, I've watched myself on video from performances that I did that I was like, someone recorded a night that I was like, that night was fucking great. We were great. And I'll watch it on a video and I'll be like, this sucks. It's this soulless crap. Everything sounds and looks flat and terrible. And I think music,
you just needed 1 million stagehands.
It's like, it just
come in and set up
maybe
the
you
drums.
So much of the energy is in the room, you know what I mean? And you can't recreate that. You can't recreate the energy of an audience and their heat and the electricity coming off of them and the band and the booming sound and all that shit just mixed together in this big stew. You can't put that on film.
I think to your point, that's probably why this is considered one of the greatest concert movies.
Because most of them suck.
More than any others, go through great lengths to sort of bring that experience to the audience who is not there in the building with them. And I'm trying to think of other concert films that might be a contender, and it's kind of hard. I mean, Song Remains the Same jumps out there.
I got a good one.
I personally like the Rolling Stones' Rock and Roll Circus, which is another one that it's not truly a concert, it's more of a performance. But I don't think I think it pales in comparison to Stop Making Sense. What do you got, Brian?
I think the only one my other two favorites, and the only one I could think that maybe contends artistically or just like kind of, in terms of both musically and the film itself, is The Last Waltz of the Band that was done by Scorsese. So that's another favorite of mine. I love the band. I'd love to do a podcast on one of them. I love them. And then third would be my early teenage years are pretty much just filled with Led Zeppelin. So The Song Remains the Same is in there for me, even though it's very weird. And there's like a whole weird, like, Lord of the Rings interlude where they're riding horses and shit.
Has their own
I've seen almost none of these too. I've seen.
Oh man! Yeah. Oh dude, it's so dumb. Like the whole I forget who that is. Maybe it's like Jimmy. I forget whose segment that is, Joshua, where he's like riding a horse. There's a sword and a beach, and it's like
it might be Jimmy Page.
Jimmy Page is in all
Jimmy
that shit.
Page.
Yeah.
The one with John Bonham is great. It's just like him drinking and driving cars.
John Bonham.
I'm easy.
That one.
That's my personality.
But one alternative point I wanted to make to what Greg was saying is that oftentimes, like I think there's something that's not just like a concert film, right? A handful of these have captured a time in history, like the Rolling Stones' "Gimme Shelter," or like a weird moment in culture that, like The Last Waltz or something, where a band is ending or their arc is finishing. Even this is the last tour that the Talking Heads ever did. So it was done
really?
So I think sometimes this is it. This is the last tour.
But they made more albums.
So it's sort of, but this is the last time they ever toured together. So stuff like that, or even what's the Beatles documentary where they're up on the roof, or the Let It Be stuff, Get Back, or like, I think sometimes it's not just the music, it's the band members and the emotional state. Or other great one would be, I'd put this in the bank too, is the Wilco documentary.
Oh man, I saw that one. That's great. I've
never finished that.
Yeah.
I'm trying to.
Should we put that on the list? Because I need to finish
that. There's some art. There's some art in that one too. Like the filmmaker is really good. They know what they're doing.
Well, that it's capturing a moment in the band's history that is, right pre, like, for example, that, like, during the Yankee Hotel Foxtrot kind of Jay Bennett fallout, all this sort of stuff that's happening with that. Like, it just captures a moment in time with a lot of some of the ones that people really like. That is not just about the music. It's like what's going on in the timeline of some people's beloved band, like the Rolling Stones or whatever. The Gimme Shelter one's about what, the Hells Angels.
The Hells Angels, how they brilliantly hired the Hells Angels to be security for their shows. Like, what could possibly go wrong? Fucking idiots.
So stuff like that. So I mean, there's a bunch of them out there. I guess that's why I asked, like, could you pick a favorite? But this is up there for me. I've probably seen this one, Last Waltz, and I know I just came up with the Wilco one, but man,
it's really good
too. Yeah. That's probably
undermined your own argument.
Yeah,
because they have this moment.
So and really none of these, but but this one is probably the only one, maybe, and then the band that musically I like a lot. Like the whole concert, I enjoy. I also like George Harrison's The Concert for Bangladesh is also really good.
Never seen that one either.
Can't say I've
never seen that. If you've never seen that one, but
yeah.
All right. Well, I feel like we're hitting quite a lot of tape here.
Your Talking Heads Max.
So why don't we just
time to flip the vinyl?
Yeah, some final thoughts here. Let's grade it. Is this a building on fire, or is it rather sugar on my tongue?
What?
Building on fire bad, sugar on tongue good?
Yeah, that would be.
I mean, you don't want
burning
down the house.
You don't want a building. It's love building on fire.
I wouldn't recommend it. Yeah, building on a fire. It's just you're asking for trouble.
Is it?
I know you want to keep going.
Is it? Are they saying that they're trying to build on fire?
Leave them alone. I like these.
Or
let's just give it a grade. Just give it a grade.
Let them do the thing. I like it.
I know, but I never understand.
What grade would you give my grading system?
It's anthropomorphic plankton versus anthropomorphic beluga whale is probably the greatest one.
Well, I didn't do my homework that week. That one was
you always
on
pick the most obscure shit that I don't know.
This one I actually thought about beforehand, man. Building on fire, bad. Sugar on my
fire
tongue,
bad.
Good. Greg, what's
don't you know fire bad?
Fire bad.
I want to hear your rating.
This one is hard for me because I don't like concert movies. As I said before, like it doesn't convey.
Greg hates fun.
It doesn't convey. No, I love going to shows. I love going to shows. And every time I see a show filmed, it's dead. It's like it's 30% of it comes through to a camera. So like it's. Like I probably won't ever watch this again. It's not going to be something I come back to and I'm like, oh, we got to watch Stop Making Sense again. But as something from a genre that I don't like it's excellently done. You can tell that a filmmaker made it. The technique of it is great. The performers are amazing. It gave me a whole bunch more appreciation for David Byrne as a performer and a creator. Just the unconscious like restlessness and energy, and he just wasn't. He was doing everything without thinking, and really at a really high level. And he's confident enough to surround himself with excellent musicians and not worry about being shown up. At this point in his career, he's like, I'm pretty confident about my abilities.
Yeah, that's good.
On that level, it's incredible to watch. But I was restless watching it. I have like the ADHD thing that Josh was talking about too, where you're just like, I kind of need more stuff to happen. I don't know. Like I like narratives. I like stories. I like, stuff that moves forward, toward different plot points and stuff. So as a documentary of a concert, it's like an A. It's as good as you can make one. As something I'm going to watch again, like I'm just not going to watch it again. I guess I can only grade it on its genre. For its genre, it's an A. For entertainment, for me, I'd say it was like a B. Like I was like, toward the end, the last 20 minutes, I was getting a little like, how much is left on this? But
better than Limpet.
Better than Limpet? No, Limpet's so good. He defeated the Nazis. Did the Talking Heads defeat the Nazis? Did their work?
Well, in a way.
Did they?
All right, Brian, you can go last. Since you can bring it home since this is your selection. I will. Yeah. So, Greg, you've already said it all. It's as good a concert movie as you could possibly make. It's fantastic. It's an A+. I really appreciate the production that went into it, the logistics that had to take place in order to pull it all off at every given moment of the performance. The energy it really just like comes through. Yeah, and I don't really feel the need to break it down like on an entertainment level because I did enjoy it quite a bit. There were some ups and downs. I didn't think every song was a banger, but it was just a fantastic performance all the way around. I will say, and this is not Talking Heads' fault. This is my own fault. I think probably like maybe between 50 and 75% of all concerts I've been to in my life, I've left early.
Oh, wow. No, really? Oh, man, I never leave a show.
It's true.
Shit.
The last concert I went with you left early.
Oh, my God, I never ever leave a show.
Before the headliner came on, Joshua was leaving. He was like 2 songs in. He's
no.
All right, dude, I'm out.
I'm the guy.
I watched a good 5 or 6 songs.
I'm the guy that's still back there when the lights are half up going like, the show's over. Clearly, I'm like, they might come back.
Third encore.
I have to like really love a band in order to like get myself to be like, I gotta be Traffic, guys. And I can and when I got to the end of Stop Making Sense, I have the honesty with myself to be like, if I was there in 1983, I probably would have left
the dish. Everyone's like, it's the greatest concert of all time. You're like, yeah,
it's not Talking Heads' fault. It's
I left in song 5. LA, man, the traffic, it's crazy. I'm not gonna wait for the whole show in LA.
Across town.
you saw him in the suit, right? And he's like, no, man.
Suit? What are you talking about?
I left once Tina came out in song 2. I was like, I was tired.
Heaven would be light traffic on the way out of here. That would be heaven for me.
Yeah. I love going to concerts as well, but I love 70% of going to
concerts. Man.
I just love this. He's like, I just love
like after a certain amount of time, like I mean there's definitely bands where I'm just like, I'm in it till the end. But there's a lot of bands where I'm just like, I need to go see them, and then it's like, but
I'll watch I don't need to
see the encore.
Any band, any live band. I'll watch bluegrass. I don't give a crap. It's just like I'm fascinated by live performance. I always think, especially music, I just think it's incredible that people can do this stuff. They're magicians.
Well, that's good to hear that at least you appreciated its cinematic qualities.
Absolutely.
I guess.
No, and it also like it inspired me to like dig a little deeper into their catalog and understand them more as a band. And I feel like I definitely understand them more than I did and appreciate them more than I did before watching this. So thank you.
And you didn't stop at 7 songs in and run into your car and drive away so you could leave the show.
No, I didn't.
Where's Daddy going? He has to leave the show, even if it's on video.
I don't know. He's like, they're playing Making Flippy Floppy again. I gotta.
I'm out of here.
Gotta go. Am I gonna?
You gotta bring it home, man.
Bring it home, man.
I'm not gonna like go on and on. I think clearly I'm a fan of the band, and I've seen this a number of times. I'm sure I'll watch it again. Not like I sit down and watch this every weekend or anything, but as one of my favorite bands, I think it's just a kind of a paramount of their kind of career, and it's rare to have a band like this have such a well-known performance that is sort of like a cultural thing to bring it back 40 years later. So I thought it was fitting to bring it back. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a fantastic introduction to the band if you've never really listened to them, in kind of getting across their, obviously they've had latter albums, but these are all the songs are coming from their most famous, I'd say. So yeah, you get kind of the early side of them, and then a bit more of the world music coming in. I think the extended lineup really makes it energetic and frenetic and fun and that kind of stuff. And not saying, like as Joshua mentioned, every song a banger. I do enjoy most of them. I think there's maybe 1 or 2 that I like, in that right, like Swamp and maybe What a Day It Was or something like that. but then it rolls right into This Must Be the Place, Once in a Lifetime, and just brings it home. So I'd encourage anyone that's maybe listening in the future to check out Stop Making Sense. I didn't notice too much. I know we didn't even talk about it at all, but the remastering, I think I watched the remaster of this, but I think
I watched a grainy ass YouTube.
I couldn't get it.
So I can't speak to it.
I mean, the old version, the original one is burned into my brain from seeing. So I was like, I don't know, it looks the same to me. So, but hey, if it
gets released in a theater, I will definitely go see the remastered version.
But will you leave early?
Well, it depends.
Some of those theaters, the parking is a nightmare.
I've only left 2 movies in my life. So.
Oh, really? We should dig into that a little deeper. Why will you leave concerts but not movies?
Too many people.
But no, it's a fantastic. I enjoy music documentaries for the most part. Some are turds, but of the bands I love, I always want to see more of bands that I like. So if there's a thing, or even better if it's behind the scenes and stuff like that. So especially if we're going on the cultural touchstone. Yeah, clearly they've remastered this and brought it back because it is such a cultural.
This is a cultural touchstone. I mean, Mr. Limpet. It's not on the stature of Mount Limpet.
I think the Incredible Mr. Limpet's going to be a cultural touchstone for our friendship.
Totally, man.
Club. All right. Well, since who's next? What's on the docket next?
I'm next.
Joshua.
Oh, all right.
Joshua.
What do you?
So next week, we will be discussing Scott Pilgrim versus the World. Which I know we wanted to start steering back into
we're clear.
Music. But this is a movie that I think is a great fusion of indie music, comic books, video games, and it's a film about all of those things.
It's drenched. Yeah, drenched in music, like baklava's drenched in honey.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the comics. I read the comics as they were coming out and had to wait for the next year for the next volume to come out. And so when they turned around and made a movie out of it, I was all about it. And then there's an anime that's just been released on Netflix, which I haven't made my way all the way through. But I did put this on the list after I found out that you guys had not seen the movie. I think it's worth a watch and it's worth a discussion because I think there's a lot there, whether you like it or hate it. I think it's an interesting movie.
Is it like a video game or comic mixed in with it's kind of like a Limpet-esque?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Isn't it
see what Limpet bore? The fruit that the tree of Limpet bore?
Would you say it's a direct descendant of Mr. Limpet?
I would not say.
It was actually
a direct descendant.
Scott Pilgrim was made by talking porpoises that were trained by Henry Limpet. It's a little known fact.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So we'll talk about that more next week.
We'll talk about it next week.
Same as it ever was.
Same as it ever was.
Same as it ever was.
Same as it ever
Same
was.
as it ever was.
Same as it ever was. I'm gonna beat my head again and again with my open palm as we leave the show.
See you next week.